Hi everyone at home and welcome to our Dancing Pencils and UmSinsi Books channel. Today I am joined by Nicola Rodda. Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
Lovely, we feel really warm being joined by you today in our channel. Just tell us quickly about who are you and why you're here.
Okay, I'm the author of Road to Nowhere, which is the second edition of a book that was published by UmSinsi Press in 2001. We'll get to the delay shortly. I write as Nichola Rhys, which is taken from the middle names of my two sons, Robert Nicholas and Benjamin Rhys. The separation of identities came about because when I started writing with Felicity, I was still a practicing scientist, and getting my rigorous left-brained writing in science recognized under my name at the same time as using my name for my right-brained creative writing seemed tricky and a potential conflict of interests. So I first came to Felicity in around 2000.
Yeah, still coming to that, Nicola. How did you come to write this book? Because it's very interesting. The title Road to Norway. How did you come to write it?
Okay, well, it actually has quite a long story. Do we have the capacity to go that way?
No, just give us just a clue, anyone who's watching there at home, a hint. And then we are still also coming to the gist of the book, but now, we're just asking, how did you come to write it?
This particular book? Well, I was doing my PhD in England, and there were two people who were responsible and take the credit for introducing me to the right-hand side of my brain. Previously, I had decided right side of brain, messy, nasty, stay out of it. Left-hand side, comfortable, I could work with that. I at the time had just recovered from ME, and I had problems with balance and back pain. So I went to somebody called an Alexander teacher who works with the body, but it's a very right brain technique. So that first opened my right brain. Then when I was writing up my PhD dissertation, I had two documents open. One was my very left brain rigorous dissertation, and the other was the story that just started pouring out from me. Then I got back to South Africa, found Felicity's book in the bookshop, and thought, this is what I want to do. And the story that developed was that of a disabled teenager called Jeff, who's facing his matric exams, and he has this dream of going to university and becoming an engineer so he can forge an independent life for himself. But for his matric trials, his marks completely fall apart because he's really struggling with health and disability, and the reason for that is that his parents are going through a very bitter divorce, and that's basically destroying all the sense of security he's ever had.
Sure.
So the story follows him to university, through making his first ever close friend, through becoming a part of a group, and then finally beginning to believe in his dreams. It's called A Road to Nowhere because in the beginning of his relationship with the fellow student who becomes his friend, they listen to a song called Road to Nowhere. And the friend says, pretty bleak outlook on life that is. At the end of the book, they're sitting together and the friend says, so do you still think your life is a road to nowhere? And he just smiles and says no. So that's why I wrote to nowhere.
Indeed, it's a very lovely story. So I'm sure you want to grab the book and read the book. So we're also going to give the details on how you can get to read the book and find out life is sometimes feels like a road to nowhere. But Nicola, you told me that when you came back, you find the book in bookshop like by Felicity, and then you jailed with it, and then felt like this is what I wanna do. What was the book? Do you still remember the book that you read?
Yes, it was Dancing Pencils, and I think I even got it at Exclusive Books before Exclusive Books died. It's actually as a sideline, a great sad thing that print and paper books have gone down so much relative to electronic books.
Yeah.
There's still something about the feel of a book in your hand which is unique.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I found that book and it said to me, this is what I've been waiting for. I want to write and this is the way I want to write. Because previously I'd tried a few writing courses and they said you have to have an outline. You have to have a beginning and a middle and an end to each chapter. And this just sounded like way too much and I can't work. So reading Dancing Pencils felt like coming home.
Yeah.
And so I tracked down Felicity through the details on the back cover, and she invited me to join her Dancing Pencils adult writing
Yes.
group. And that is where the beginnings of the story that I had started in England whilst writing my dissertation just all came pouring out in the book that became Road to Nowhere.
Yes. I think that's also one of the secrets, like, you know, you highlighted on the feel when you're holding an actual book, and then also like the help that the right brain is helping. It also helped on your dissertation that you were writing, because you also, you know, ideas that just came flowing without you know, digging them. That's how this right brain side is creative. But then, Nicola, so asking you the gist of the book, it would be just unfair. But maybe if you were being asked a question, what would you just tell someone that this is the gist of the book? I know you've explained like there was a song or to know where they were listening to, but then
Well, firstly I just wanted to address something about the strength of right brain thinking and right brain writing, because when I started first on my own after the Alexander lessons and with Felicity's writing club, I was writing away and it opened up a lot of memories of my own, which led me to realize that I'd had a very abusive childhood in a dysfunctional family where there was total rule of silence. You never spoke to anybody about what happened at home, and you didn't even speak to each other about what happened. So I came with this story to Dancing Pencils, but I hadn't realized my own story yet. So to show the power of right brain writing, one of the anecdotes from really early in the writing was, I just kind of, while I was writing here, the question popped into my mind, Jeff, why am I writing you with half a body? And this answer came that I wasn't expecting at all. He says, because you have half a life. And I said, what do you mean? He said, just write, you'll find out. So that's the power of right brain writing. I would never found out about that part of myself without accessing it that way. So the gist of the book, I've told you what the story is generally about, the kinds of people who might be interested in it. It certainly would do well as a reader in high school. It's not set in the current political climate, but it's still the same story of a young person finding their path in life.
Yeah, sure.
So reader, leisure read for young people in their late teens, early 20s. I think it would also appeal to older readers because it has this theme of triumph over adversity, which is something you experience throughout life, not just young people. It also touches on a number of social issues, including the kinds of physical and societal barriers that people with disabilities encounter, the effect of growing up as a child in a dysfunctional household, and then also the more subtle things that are spoken about much more these days but weren't in those days. So the effect of mental health difficulties like loneliness, like depression, like anxiety, and how they shape our lives on a subtle level, despite what we think we're doing with our lives. So those are the groups to whom I think it would appeal. The final thing that would hopefully bring people to this book is that it has a core message that you should have dreams and you should follow those dreams no matter what.
No, very lovely, Nicole. But now one will ask, you said that this is now came as a second edition. You said the first one was in 2001. One will ask why you have come back writing now.
Well, when I came to Dancing Pencils first, I was just starting out as a mom and a lecturer, and I had this urge to write. And on a writing course recently, that was online, somebody said, you know, your first book is that book that you have to write. It's not the one that's not necessarily going to get the biggest audience, but it's that book that you have to write. Then life got very busy.
Yeah.
And the writing had to go on the back burner. And since then, ex-husband and children have left home. I'm settled in a much calmer second marriage. I'm medically retired, so I have time on my hands now.
Sure.
So it was a case of, what do I do with my life now? What is my purpose? And the answer was there in my head, go back to your writing. So I came back to Felicity, and she very kindly agreed to publish a second edition of Road to Nowhere. I've added a few bits to it from what I now know about my own personal story. And here we are with the published book.
That's very lovely. I'm very happy for you. Congratulations on your second edition book, and congratulations to everyone that is going to get some help from the book. And also, the book is also on Amazon now, so people can look for the link on UmSinsi Press Books on Amazon. So you can also follow UmSinsi and Dancing Pencils on social media, so you can also get the link, or follow Nichola Rhys on Facebook, like her Facebook page on Facebook, so you can also get the link, the channels that are going to help you to find the book, so you can just have a lovely read and find out what is going on Road to Nowhere. She has mentioned what is entailed on the book. But then now, what do you feel, Nicole, about the right brain knowledge?
Right brain knowledge. Yeah, that's a really hard question to somebody whose entire education and background is very left-brained.
Yeah.
So I had to think about this one. I think that right-brained knowledge is involved in every sphere and endeavor of life. If you look at left-brained people like scientists and innovators, that sort of thing, I think the really good ones got that first spark of inspiration, that first thing that told them this was the idea. I think that came from their right brains. That's followed by a lot of really hard left brain work to get it rigorous and peer-reviewed and recognized as knowledge. I think the people who work in more people-oriented fields like social sciences, human sciences, politicians, they have a mix. They have the right-brained understanding of what people feel and think, especially feel, but then they have to go to the right-brained route to test out their theories and to present them in the sort of writing that will be taken seriously. And then on the far other end, you have the artistic and creative arts, where doing the art is entirely right-brained. But in order to package it in a way that it can be publicized and sold, that needs some left-brained input.
Yeah, for sure. You just gave us a very simplified overview of how you find and feels the right brain knowledge, and we really likes it and loves it. Would you like to read anything from your book? Just maybe a short extract or anything?
I didn't come prepared for this. If you go to my Facebook page, which is called Nichola Rhys, creative writer with UmSinsi Press, you will find under the post describing the book a number of excerpts from the chapters, just to give you a taster. I'm going to have to hunt, so you'll just have to be patient. The opening chapter, where you are introduced to Jeff and his problems, reads as following. The final year teachers of the local high school in the coastal town of Port Shepstone faced one another around the conference table in the principal's office. The meeting, chaired by Principal Angela Harding, had been called towards the end of the third and penultimate term of the school to ratify the results of the trial matriculation exams for 1919. Before we get into the specific results per subject, are there any particular anomalies anyone would like to highlight? She asked. Several heads nodded vigorously. Angela looked round at her senior staff over the top of her gold-rimmed spectacles. She was a large woman with grey hair cut in a severe bob style, strong in both appearance and character. With whom do we want to start then, she asked. Jeff Foster. It came emphatically from several voices at once. Jeff, but he's one of our best students. Angela made no attempt to hide her surprise. Was, corrected Chris Ward, head of science. His physical science marks in the trials were almost 20% down on his previous average, and I believe the trend is the same in all his subjects. He's barely passed in some cases. More nods around the table. Chris's fingers drummed on the polished surface of the table in barely concealed frustration. Every way he turned it, it made no sense. It was not a trivial matter. Jeff did not have many routes open to him beyond his academic strength. What's more, he continued, I teach his sister Megan in Standard 6. Her latest test results are down too. Science isn't her strength as it is Jeff's, but her marks have dropped noticeably relative to her average over the year. Yes, concurred Lillian Sanders, head of English. Jeff's marks in the trials were a disaster. His English marks, I mean. I also teach Megan. English is her strong subject, yet her latest marks are also way down in that. What's going on? Angela queried. If it's both of them, is it something at home? There was a pause. Then Lillian spoke up hesitantly. I'm not sure I should bring this up. It feels rather like breaking a confidence. But under the circumstances, she sighed. Jeff comes to see me in the book room some lunchtimes. He isn't particularly talkative, as you know, but he's dropped the occasional comment. We know the home background, how protective his mother is of him, how dependent he is on his family because he has so little peer group contact. Well, it appears there's some kind of family crisis. I'm not clear on exactly what has happened, but apparently there has been some talk of his parents separating. I don't know if there's any justification to it, but he's mentioned fears of being separated from his sister too. Oh, Angela commented. That explains a lot. She and Chris Ward exchanged glances. As well as being head of science, he was also her deputy. He and she knew all too well that the Foster family structure had its flaws. They knew too how heavily the 17-year-old Jeff relied on that structure. Megan, his 13-year-old sister, did too naturally, but Jeff's life had a complication which Megan's did not, one which isolated him from most of the usual social structure of teenage high school life. Jeff was disabled, his left side underdeveloped and weak, with little control. It was not an attribute which promoted integration into the image-conscious milieu of average mainstream high school life.
No. Thank you.
Now, if you want me to scratch around for what gave the title of the book, I can do that, but otherwise it's on the web page, on the Facebook page.
No, what you will just do, you can scratch it around, just that more details. I think we may have to emphasize that they can get it on your Facebook page that you've just mentioned earlier on.
I've highlighted there the bits that give the most indication of where shifts in Jeff's character occur.
Thank you very much. Any final words?
Well, of course, to Felicity, thank you for helping me find my unconscious creative right brain, not only in terms of writing, but also because you've set me on a path of personal healing, which I would not have found without you. For everyone else out there, maybe right brain writing isn't entirely for you. If you're a scientist, it's not going to get you published that easily. But for anyone who wants to explore themselves, and anyone who's always had that desire to write, I really feel this is the way for you to go.
Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.